What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here. Back again, talking college football. New video today. We are recapping week 3. This is going to include all the bets we went through. We'll really spotlight the high-profile games between ranked opponents, Power 4 conferences. We'll get into all that. Shorter video, but really looking for feedback on this more than anything. So please leave a comment below. Maybe we'll get some graphics if you want to look at like post-game win expectancy, stuff like that, which we can, of course, add. I have some stuff in the back end. It's just not very visually pleasing. Otherwise, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Those things help us a ton. And thank you if you have done that. We will reference sides and totals, a lot of betting stuff. So if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. So I'm not really sure. I'll kind of show you two things. First of all, we can look at like box scores if you guys want. So this would be like, okay, here's what actually happened in the Texas A&M Notre Dame game. I guess I'll just leave this up for now, but if you'd prefer, for whatever reason, to just look at me like this, I guess we can. But anyway, let's start off with this game. I guess, first of all, it was a very good week for me in the betting streets, and we'll get into some of the games. This was one of them. We had Texas A&M +7. They end up winning the game outright. And there wasn't really that much stuff that was super fishy in the box score. They had about a 66% post-game win expectancy, and they outgained Notre Dame 7.1 yards per play to 6.0. Excuse me. It's not the morning over here in Milwaukee. It is late afternoon on Sunday. Motorcycles are out. Try to record in the morning, so that generally doesn't happen, but what are you going to do? Anyway, so Texas A&M wins a game, a shootout. They won all of the metrics on the back end, win percentage, yards per play. And I guess the real stories in the game were, one, referees. There was some, I guess, especially at the end of the game, a hold that wasn't called on A&M that was really controversial. There's a lot of those game in, game outs. That's not really anything that I hone in on. Notre Dame's defense is getting a lot of flack right now for moving towards, like a zone heavy scheme where they were able to play man coverage a lot last year. And there was some Notre Dame quarterback telegraphing, apparently based on his stance, the way he lines up. They could tell, and that is, if it was a run or a pass. Clearly, it didn't matter because they gave up 40 points. Otherwise, some other weird stuff in the game, like A&M had a punt blocked for a touchdown. That was how Notre Dame got 7 of their points. They also had an interception that turned into a Notre Dame field goal. Notre Dame also had an interception that turned into an A&M touchdown, so it was a little bit of a horse apiece there. Notre Dame, of course, botched an extra point, which ended up, they lost by 1, so that was a pivotal play in the game. And they also had a lot of turnover on downs. Texas A&M still had 13 penalties in the game. That certainly cost them in some spots. So overall, kind of an ugly game via penalties, ugly game on defense. There was a lot of injuries in the game, too. A&M's Bryce Anderson had to get stretchered off the field. Notre Dame lost 3 defensive backs at various points in the game. Some of them did return to the contest. There was an ejection for targeting. So I don't think it was just Chris Ash either. You lose 5 full-time starters from last year, a couple in the secondary. Your depth was really tested too. A lot of the players that were rotational pieces for Notre Dame are gone. Like one is on Boise State starting. Kennedy Urlacher transferred out too. So it's not only, okay, we lost some starters to the NFL, to graduation. We lost some depth pieces to transfer. So when a couple players go down for Notre Dame in game, you're really relying on pieces that you probably weren't last year. So that was another pivotal point in the game too. And Texas A&M gets a really tough, hard-earned win on the road. Notre Dame falls to 0-2. They need to run the table to make the college football playoff. And fortunately for them, their 2 toughest games are behind them. I think the most difficult opponent left on the schedule is USC, which we'll see how that goes for this Notre Dame team. But overall, it was nice to get a win in this contest. Another one we took was Florida, and this one we did not get a win. And honestly, I don't really know what to think of this game. So the final score is 20-10. Everything you guys saw was probably the Lagway performance. He throws 5 interceptions. One of them was a pick 6. But LSU only scored 10 points off of turnovers in this game, which is a little alarming. What was this offense doing out there? And we had concerns with the offense coming into the year, the main one being the offensive line. And Sometimes Garrett Nussmeier can throw you out of games. He didn't do that here. They had one turnover, but it didn't matter in the game. Lagway gave it right back. LSU had all of the metrics behind them, 71% post-game win expectancy. They won yards per play, 6.6 to 4.8. And they deserved to win. It was kind of just an ugly overall game. LSU was stuck in the mud on offense. They have not gotten their pass game going for 2 straight weeks now. And honestly, it's kind of just one half they've looked good against Clemson. They did not have a good first half in that contest either. Big concerns on offense for this team. The road gets a little easier in coming weeks before it gets harder again, but I'm not sure what to make of this unit. The O-line, just as much of a problem, if not more, especially in the run game as they were last year. And now Florida, 1-2, 2 straight losses. Things are not getting harder this week. You're going to face Miami at home, and you're already a 9.5, 10-point underdog in that contest. Their offense is a disaster under Napier. He is not adjusted very well, and Lagway needs to settle down. I think part of the problem with this offense, Lagway spent almost the entire offseason hurt. We have not seen a lot of development time for him, and they're using young players. They're playing freshmen out there. Vernell Brown is a freshman. He didn't really get development time with Eugene Brown either. He was hurt all of last year. So with this schedule, I mean, Florida probably needed a little bit more of a runway to get into the meat of their schedule, and they just didn't have that. Without an offseason for a lot of these players, it was really difficult to see them coming in and succeeding. And I'm a victim of this. Not a victim. I'm guilty of this, I should say. I took Florida in this contest, and we took an L here. So one thing we did a lot of was bet some SEC teams, particularly ones on the road, and that did not go all that well. It was mostly the grease that got there for us, not these SEC road teams. But let's talk a couple other games. We're going to kind of rapid fire them if you haven't guessed. Clemson takes on Georgia Tech. Let's pull up the box score for this one. Georgia Tech's running that funky offense with Haynes King. And man, he had another 100-yard performance. Clemson couldn't stop this. I thought this could have been worse. Georgia Tech had 2 pivotal 4th downs in this game. One was in the first quarter. They called like a screen pass on it, and it didn't matter. Like it was, even though it was unsuccessful, like the next possession, Clemson fumbles, and then Georgia Tech gets the ball back, and they're able to convert a field goal. So even though they had that weird 4th down, they still got points out of it basically because of a Clemson error. But it wasn't just that. They had another 4th down late in the game, a weird 4th down, where they did this direct snap that resulted in another fumble. So I think that honestly, this margin of victory could have been wider for Georgia Tech, which doesn't align with the postgame. Georgia Tech had a 32% postgame win expectancy, so you're looking at 68% for Clemson. And you might be wondering, oh, Matt, 68% win expectancy, it seems like Clemson should have covered this game. The average margin of victory was right on 3, so there were, even if it did go the way it was supposed to, we weren't covering that spread, so I can't really feel bad about my Clemson wager. Georgia Tech lost yards per play 5.1 to 6.3. I think part of that is just the way they're playing. I'm not really alarmed. They're running Haynes King right into the ground, and that limits their explosiveness unless it's Haynes King or Jamal Haynes getting one on the ground. They're not getting them through the air, and it's by choice. This is like I don't want to compare it to an armed force academy, but it kind of is like that. The death by 1,000 paper cuts. I don't know. That's kind of how they're playing right now. Other things in this game, Clemson had the 2 turnovers we mentioned. It only resulted in 3 points for Georgia Tech, so if they convert a few more of those, that could have been worse. Clemson did botch a field goal. It was a long one, 52 yards, and they've struggled with kicking for about 2 years now. It kind of is what it is. But ultimately, I don't think there was anything sort of out of context. My biggest disappointment with Clemson is just their entire team is back. They had 19 starters returning for this team. Yet they lost Phil Maffa. They lost a couple on defense. And Will Held got hurt for part of this game. But, I mean, did this team get worse with the same players coming back? Did they not develop a single player year in and year out? Drops were a problem in this game again. I mean, I'm not really sure what this team is doing. Meanwhile, Georgia Tech, I think they're kind of a dark horse to make something happen in the ACC. Right now, it seems like Miami's race to lose, and I don't know who their opponent would be in the championship. They're kind of just greasing out these games. My biggest fear is that they run Haynes King into the ground and they lose him. Philo is a decent backup, but Haynes King already missed one game. Fortunately, they had the luxury of holding him out against a weak opponent, but it's still a concern long-term. This offensive line is a problem too. The hits might add up for Haynes King at some point this season. Game 3 is another loser. Again, so the funny thing about the week is we bet about 20 games or so, and we ended up plus 8 units. It's just like all of the L's came in these big games, which is probably a leak by me. Let's talk Georgia and Tennessee. Another one, we had Georgia minus a 3.5. The entire week, we're waiting for a 3, we're waiting for a 3, we're waiting for a 3, and then it's just apparent it's not going to get there unless we buy it. I did not. I sat on the 3.5 and ended up taking that number. As you can see, the hook is what gets us in this contest. But honestly, I feel pretty fortunate to have gotten away with this. I mean, like even gotten close to a cover, I should say. The post-game win expectancy for Georgia was 24%. They were outgained in this game, 7.1 yards per play to 5.8. And I mean, turnovers were even in this game. You look at what happened. One of Georgia's interceptions was a failed Hail Mary. So maybe you want to say they were in favor of Georgia, but Tennessee, I mean, they missed a field goal too from 43 yards to win the game. That's what even gets it into overtime. If you don't miss that, Georgia's not winning this game. The big takeaways in the contest were, and I don't know if this is positive or not, Georgia's DBs had a lot of problems in the game, but those long touchdowns, a lot of them, they're not that far out of position. Like the second Brazil touchdown, it's a bomb and it's underthrown, and the Georgia defensive back is right in position, right on his hip with Brazil, and then it's underthrown. He runs into the receiver, falls down, probably could have been a PI, but anyway, Brazil stays on his feet, catches it, and walks into the end zone. A second one, I think it was Brazil again. He just mosses a guy. Like the defensive backs are at least in position, and that's good. But you cannot be just getting bodied by these receivers. I'm not sure what to make of it. And they also had 10 penalties in the game too, which Tennessee, that is, which definitely hurt them. You remove some of the penalties for Tennessee, and they probably win this game too. Tennessee should have gotten a victory. On the Tennessee side, I'm still not a complete buyer in this team yet. On Aguilar, he's playing in a vastly better offensive system, and I should upgrade him based on where we had him preseason after he was a turnover machine in the Sun Belt. Clearly, he's not as talented as Nico Iamaleava from a raw talent perspective. More on that in a little bit. And I'll explain that if you're freaking out and pulling your hair out at that comment. But anyway, the offensive ecosystem is just vastly better under Heupel than what he was playing with at App State, who had a coaching staff firing at the end of last year. But anyway, the Georgia DBs are still a concern. I mean, they were a concern last year, and it appears they haven't gotten better. And then on the other side, the Georgia O-line was a problem at times. They came in with 2 injuries. They were allowing pressure to Stockton, and he had a good game to even get them in the position of going to overtime. It took a pretty crazy play to London Humphreys, followed by a 2-point conversion to Zachariah Branch to even force OT. Right now, Tennessee, I still think has some O-line problems, and their secondary is still a problem too. That should get better eventually if they get back Jermod McCoy and Ricky Gibson. It wasn't the healthiest unit there. So I'm coming away from this game just still a little confused by what to make of the top of the SEC right now. We did not really like Tennessee coming into the year. This was a good performance. We did like Georgia, and this is a step in the wrong direction. Mike Bobo getting criticism, and now the defense rightfully taking some too. One SEC contest we were on the right side of was Vanderbilt, South Carolina. 31-7 victory in this game. Yards per play, post-game win expectancy, all of this vastly favors Vanderbilt. But as you can see in the box score here, Luke Doty played a lot because Lenore Sellers got a concussion in the game, and it went poorly. This team had 4 turnovers. I'm not sure it mattered a ton. When you look at what Vanderbilt did, they got a lot of great looks on offense. So the South Carolina's defense definitely needs to take some blame for this. But yards per play was still in favor of South Carolina, 5.2 to 5.1. It was close there. The real difference was 4 turnovers. Now, one of them did come from Sellers, so it's not like, all right, you have Luke Doty in the game and suddenly the wheels fall off. That kind of did happen, but they were falling off a little bit before, and then they also missed a field goal. So this was a pretty brutal performance from South Carolina overall. And when you look at where some of these turnovers occurred, okay, so Sellers goes down, but he has the interception before that. That was on the Vanderbilt 12, by the way. They were going into score. Then South Carolina misses a field goal. It was a 53-yarder. Later in the game, South Carolina gets to the Vanderbilt 41. They have a turnover on down. However, that was immediately given back to South Carolina via interception. South Carolina turns it over on down again, and Vanderbilt gets a field goal. Later in the game, you have a fumble on the South Carolina 37. That became a Vanderbilt touchdown. You have a South Carolina fumble on the Vanderbilt 24, which was going into score. They had to punt, and then South Carolina has another interception on the Vanderbilt 12. This could have been much closer, probably should have been much closer. The average margin of victory in this game was still 23.9 points, so a lot of that just turnover driven. I mean, otherwise, this is a close game. I still think Vanderbilt is the right side. We took this very, very early in the week at plus 5.5 or 6, came all the way inside a field goal. So I feel good about the bet overall. We definitely ran a little hot with the Sellers injury. But moving forward, Vanderbilt just playing a very challenging style of offense to prepare for with a better supporting cast all around for Pavia. South Carolina, they have the problems we thought they would coming into the season, now exacerbated by a Sellers injury. Without him, this team is dead in the water. It is a concussion, so hopefully he's back this week. Big contest against Missouri that they can't afford to lose. On the road as a 13-point underdog, I'm sure Sellers has at least a role to play in where that spread is now. But their O-line's a problem. They're allowing a ton of pressure. Their receivers are a major problem. And then their defense is vastly worse than last year. Just they lost a crazy amount of talent. Just kind of is what it is with South Carolina right now. And when you lose your hero, your Superman, this is what you end up with. Another SEC contest we'll get to in depth, Arkansas, Ole Miss. We had Arkansas plus a 9, I believe. And they lose by 6. This game could have actually come down to a tie in regulation before OT, I mean. Arkansas missed 2 field goals. They were long ones, but that was the difference in the game. This game essentially had no defense played at all. And the big story is Austin Simmons suits up, but Trinidad Chambliss starts, the D2 transfer from Ferris State. And my goodness, what a game this guy has. 21 of 29. 353 through the air, 12.2 yards per attempt. And Simmons came in and vultured a touchdown for him when Chambliss got a cut on his thumb. And then he runs for 62 yards and 2 touchdowns as well for 4.7 yards per carry. Now, we knew Arkansas was going to be atrocious on defense. On top of a ton of transfers that departed, they lost some key position coaches, their secondary coach. We knew this was going to be a mess. But the Ole Miss defense returned 3 starters themselves. We knew that unit was probably going to take a step back. I did not anticipate it being this bad, and we knew their O-line was a problem. This offensive ecosystem is just so good, though. It's incredible to me that you can put a D2 transfer, a good one, but a D2 transfer into this offense and get this production. Now, it's against Arkansas, but this kind of goes both ways. You don't have good expectations for Trinidad coming in. You don't have good expectations for the Arkansas defense. You're probably expecting an outcome in the middle. That's not what we got. We got an absolute, it's a baller performance. I don't know what they're going to do at quarterback moving forward. I have to imagine they go back to Simmons. But, man, this is a good problem to have if you're Ole Miss for the time being. This offense is humming again, and I'm not sure how Lane Kiffin continues to do it. Masking the O-line problems, I might add, too. The road gets tougher for both of these teams. Pittman's definitely on the hot seat. He took some very tough questions in the postgame, which he definitely deserved. Last thing, postgame win expectancy. Arkansas was at 29%. They did have the yards per play advantage, 7.3 to 6.8, and it was a valiant effort from Talon Green, Omega Blake, and there was a monster run from Mike Washington that got them a touchdown too. So those are kind of the player spotlight features we'll give to these teams or these players in this game. Next one up is not super interesting to talk about, in my opinion. South Florida goes and gets boat raced by Miami. We did have Miami in the game. They covered this one with ease. There were a few turnovers that were kind of noisy. That maybe was a path for USF to cover, but unfortunately, they gave them right back. Miami, they scored 7 points off turnovers. USF had a couple turnover on downs. They play aggressive under Golish. It is what it is. We've seen them obviously knock off Florida And we've seen them like a couple of years ago, they scared Alabama for a couple drives and then end up losing. So when they're in these games, credit to their coaching staff, they take chances, and that either leads to some close competitive, maybe even upsets, or they just get boat raced. They were outmatched at every position in this game. Moving forward, I mean, when they get into G5 play, I'm still bullish on this team. There's no reason they can't represent the G5 in the playoff. As for Miami, this is easily the best team in the ACC at this point, starting to get some better wins. Obviously, they have the Notre Dame win, which is incredible, but you beat the cream of the crop in the G5 and Bethune-Cookman in between. Carson Beck has now climbed all the way to first, at least at some books, in Heisman odds. He's getting good play out of his freshman receivers. Wasn't expecting that. Another one in this game. Joshua Moore, 2 touchdowns. The transfers are starting to play well. Keelan Marion, 81 yards. Tony Johnson, 64. Fletcher at 120 on the ground. The O-line is awesome for this team. The defense has improved under Hetherman. The secondary is starting to look a little bit better. They still allowed 128 yards to Chaz Nimrod. So maybe you're looking at teams that can shoot out over the top of them. And that's the thing with Miami in certain matchups. They're a nightmare for Georgia Tech, who's not throwing the ball. With Mesidor and Bain and this front seven on defense, it's going to be really hard to go up against this Miami team. So it's like you look at the ACC, who are you particularly scared of that beats this team? Just like a quick glance at the ACC right now. Clemson, you don't trust them to throw the ball with Klubnik at this point. Kevin Jennings has been up and down to start the year. I mean, maybe you look at Florida State with Castellanos. He's had a good start. Louisville is like technically this kind of team, but I just don't think they're talented enough. And then you quickly get into like the mid part of this conference, the low end. Miami, definitely worth some futures right now, and we have some on them, luckily. But had them in this game, feel pretty good about this one and the process that went into it. Another one I'm really not sure, and getting very close to putting this team on the banned list, Duke, Tulane. Duke loses by 7 points after they just get absolutely blown out by Illinois, but it was kind of the same story in this game. I'm not sure. They had a 19% post-game win expectancy. They did lose yards per play, 6.9 to 6.0, but Duke missed a field goal. They had another one blocked. They had 2 turnovers on down. The real problem with Duke right now is their defense is atrocious. And without Moore on the back end, they just can't stop anybody. They just allowed Retzlaff to rush for 111 yards. It's a problem up front as well as in the back end. Turnovers have been a huge issue for Duke this year, and now they're doing them in weird ways. Like Mensah had a very bad game against Illinois, but you can't have field goals blocked. Like I'm just not really sure what to make of this contest. Tulane, coming into the season, a lot of people were down on Tulane and then also down on Jake Retzlaff. I can't really say that I was high on this team, but I definitely thought Retzlaff was an upgrade over the quarterback room they had with Simons and Sullivan. It's still not dynamic through the air, and I'm not really looking at Retzlaff's 245 yards and giving him a ton of credit just because this Duke secondary has one good player till they get more back. But on the ground, I mean, this Retzlaff, it's almost like Haynes King light. This is a dynamic rusher from the quarterback position that's given a lot of teams problems. I mean, that maybe the American is going to be fireworks like it has been in the past before all their teams left for higher level conferences. But USF, Tulane, there's some good teams to watch in this conference moving forward. Let's see here. What else did we have bets on? Wisconsin, Alabama. Okay, so fun game to talk about. I went to Wisconsin. I live in Wisconsin. Not near and dear to my heart, but they get railroaded by Bama 38-14. This is one I played late, took Bama. It was actually the last thing I put on my card. It was basically a pregame warm-up situation where we saw Jake Renfro listed as questionable, he's their center, looked very bad in pregame warm-ups, and he actually did end up getting hurt in the game. But he is the best player on their offense. At least at this point, Wisconsin came into the game with a backup QB. They look good against a bunch of horrible opponents, Middle Tennessee, Miami, Ohio. Weren't putting a lot of stock in that. The run game has been a mess, even with the good offensive line, and then a backup QB, just not expecting a lot through there. If they're not able to run it all on Bama, this game was cooked from the start. And early in the first half, they lose Jake Renfro. And this is a criticism on Wisconsin. They put in walk-on Kerry Kondoko, I believe is how you say it. But they put in a walk-on against Alabama, who actually had some injuries in their front seven too. They were on their third-string defensive tackle. But what happened every play? The guy wasn't even using moves, and they're probably not developed. I believe he's a freshman. He bull rushed their center straight into O'Neal, like every single play. This is Wisconsin. You cannot be putting walk-ons. It is cute. It's always a great, I don't know, it's good for morale when you have these players that are weight room warriors. They get stronger and they get so much better. But at the end of the day, this is Alabama. You cannot be putting a walk-on the field against Alabama. You cannot do it. It is indefensible. And they lost. And it's probably, things like this are going to cost Luke Fickell his job. He's had such a bad run with QB injuries, but you cannot do this. You cannot. And I know the program is in a really bad spot. The infrastructure is bad because people that donate to the Wisconsin program, they miss the Paul Chryst days of ground and pound, which was really just the Badgers playing a certain style of football against weak opponents in the Big Ten West that succeeded before getting beat and actually having some good QB luck, like getting Russell Wilson for a year. And they just don't have that right now. You're now in the NIL era, so you need to raise money. They're not doing that at the highest level. You need to recruit. They're not doing that at the highest level. It's better than Chris, but it's not enough. And they're not playing the Big Ten West anymore. You schedule non-con Alabama, you go to Tuscaloosa. You cannot do this. One other thing we had in the game was the under. That kind of got cooked on Alabama still has these sleepy points in the game. They gave up a kick return, to Vinny Anthony, which they probably would have covered. Or the under wasn't going to come in anyway, but that was just frustrating. And it's funny, you look at like post-game win expectancy and stuff for this team. Alabama actually had an average margin of victory of 45. This closed at 45.5, 46. I bet an under 48. And the closing line value blew up in my face again. But like Alabama almost covered this, almost got the over by themselves. And if they just take advantage of some other situations in this contest, they do. A couple other things. Ty Simpson, as good as he's been against these two weaker teams, he's still missing a couple throws on that first fourth down that he missed. He just didn't read the whole field. They turn it over. I believe he threw the ball away or missed a player, but he had a receiver wide open down the field uncovered, and he just didn't look that way. So there's still some things in the pass game for Simpson to clean up, as good as he has been. But Alabama, I think moving forward, has sort of rehabilitated their stock after Florida State. What a mess. Last one we'll get to in depth is the backyard brawl. I'm not sure what to make of this game. Coaching was kind of weird. And here's kind of why. West Virginia got all their points on their own. And they had a 37% post-game win expectancy. I think that should have been closer, and I think they deserve to win this game because yards per play is in their favor, 4.9 to 4.8. I didn't bet this game, by the way. I just casually watched it as a lot of games were in rain delays. But they basically allowed Pitt to score all their points off turnovers. So they played 3 QBs in the game. The QB that got the most run, well, actually not the most run, but like too much run, Scotty Fox, he had 4 pass attempts. He threw 2 interceptions. Both of those directly resulted in Pitt scores. Pitt definitely didn't have the cleanest game either. They had 14 penalties, but they couldn't get anything going on offense. It was bad Eli Holstein, which he seems to alternate good Eli Holstein, bad Eli Holstein. Last year, he had one of the highest turnover-worthy play rates in the entire country. But they lost their best player on offense in the first half, Desmond Reed. That definitely doesn't help. Overall, it was a really gross game, but I'm just kind of putting West Virginia on the wait-and-see list for now. They lose to Ohio. Then they beat Pitt, who was on a roll. But I just can't do anything with this QB rotation right now. Mark Hill's their best option. He's not a good option, but he is mobile. And in this game, he was 9 of 25. It's not bad. Like the Scotty Fox, whatever they were trying to do, it just didn't work. And it doesn't make any sense. So I'm not sure what to make of this West Virginia team. They're going to be a tough team to back either way. Jaheim White's out. They lost their number 1 receiver, Jaden Bray. It's just kind of a mess. But that's Pitt as well. I think people were hoping Pitt may have developed a little bit with Holstein year 1 to year 2. It appears the turnover-worthy plays are still a pretty big problem for him. Just kind of running down some of the other games we took and what happened. Colorado-Houston We had the over in that game, which came in pretty easily. Houston almost got there all the way on themselves. Ryan Staub didn't play that bad, but I still think you're minimizing your offense rather than maximizing it by playing a really low-level recruit at quarterback when you have a 4-star and a high-level transfer in Salter. And they're doing that across the board at a number of positions. Shermer's taken a lot of heat for this, but I mean, I don't know if he's in charge of the personnel. Dion he's deserving of some blame here too. We had Arizona at a bad line, took them at a pick 'em. They closed at 1.5. A dog. They boat raced Kansas State. That game wasn't even close. We had the under in SMU versus Missouri State. SMU scored only 28 points, so that one came way in, just a sleepy game. Jacksonville State, Georgia Southern. We had the over in this game. I realize I should be showing you some of these scores. We'll look at the Jacksonville State game. So this one finishes 34-41. The over in this contest, we had this coming in at 57.5, closed at 59. That was a solid one. We had the over in FAU, FIU, the Shula Bowl, another high-scoring affair. FAU falls flat again. Kitley's offense is a disaster, but they still put up 28, and their defense allowed 38 to Keon Jenkins and company. App State Southern Miss, we had an over 55.5 in this game. App State, let's see where this came in. 22-38, so a 60-point total in this contest. We almost bet Southern Miss too. Feel really bad that we didn't get that one in after we showed a ton of value there. Was just kind of spooked after the Mississippi State game. And honestly, App State looked good in week 1. We had really bad numbers on them to begin the season. Shouldn't have abandoned the Priors that quickly with that team. So that's one I feel bad about. Definitely a regret there. Troy, Memphis, we had an under on this game. Troy's quarterback got hurt, so there's not really too much to say here. We'll do a segment at the end of the show called Look Ahead Lines. Talk about that in a second, but yeah, that kind of helped. Utah State Air Force, we flat out just made Utah State the favorite in the game. They were catching 4.5. Air Force is platooning quarterbacks. I did not think they were going to continue doing this, but they did. The real problem in the game for Air Force is their defense. They lost so many starters. And you have a veteran quarterback in Bryson Barnes. Mendon Hall is your head coach, who's prepared for the triple option many times and succeeded against it, even with lesser competition or lesser talent like at New Mexico. But he comes out. They have a great game. Barnes threw for 287 yards. Incredible. And Air Force obviously cannot play from behind because they run the triple option. But I don't know why they're platooning quarterbacks. I thought Johnson would actually run away with that job. He has not. A loss for us, we had UAB. I don't know why I did this. This was more a short on Akron than anything. And UAB gave up a late touchdown in this game. And as usual, it was their defense. Kitna still throws for 341. I mean, like this UAB overs have to be in play across the board. Akron's offense is atrocious with Ben Finley and company, and they allow 21 points to them. My goodness. Old Dominion, Virginia Tech. All right, so Virginia Tech gets boat raced, and they fire their coach, Brent Pry, long time coming. We kind of read the tea leaves with this. Not us. I shouldn't say we. I guess the collective college football media community. I saw Bud Elliott report earlier that Virginia Tech was having a hard time hiring coordinators this offseason because this job was just toxic. And Brent Pry, obviously a lame duck coach unless he won some of these games. And Vanderbilt, South Carolina, excusable. Those are SEC opponents. But you lose to a Sunbelt Old Dominion 45-26. It's inexcusable. So we had the over in the contest. Old Dominion nearly got there themselves. That was one we felt pretty good about. We had Texas Tech over Oregon State. Basically, we're just shorting Oregon State and Washington State. I did not end up taking North Texas in that game, and Washington State nearly – I was surprised they even scored at that game at that point. They were just turning the ball over at will. But Texas Tech did whatever they wanted, 45-14 in that contest. They're finally going to have a tougher game this week. Washington State, North Texas. We took the under in this game. And again, just like, let's look at this one quick. Washington State. Realize there's a lot of Washingtons. Here it is. 59-10. So diving into this box score just a little bit, there were 3 interceptions from Potter. These were all very early in the game. North Texas, I think, hit 45 points at halftime. Something close to that. You could do the math here. I'm just bad at 42. A lot of that was off these turnovers in short fields. Like Mestamaker actually, he played really well. He was super efficient, but he didn't have the counting stats. Part of that is their fields were so short. Couldn't get explosives because you can't if you're already in the red zone. So this Washington State team can't run the ball. They're nearly dead last in efficiency there. They can't throw. They've been starting the guy everyone presumed was the fourth stringer, and then they used 3 quarterbacks. They actually put in Duggar before they turned to Eckhouse, who everyone thought was going to start for this team. Duggar goes 0 of 2. Then they bring in Eckhouse. I guess it was kind of better. At that point, the game had already been lost. So I don't know what this team is doing and what they will do moving forward. It's the South Dakota State coaching staff. And believe it or not, refusing to embrace the portal for good players and just taking your South Dakota State roster, even to the G5 level, has not gone well for Washington State. They need to make some changes in the subsequent years. Let's see. We had Tulsa against Navy. Tulsa's just not as good as I think they are. No reason to belabor that point. We had the under in Minnesota Cal at 43, ran that one to the window. Darius Taylor did not play. And Minnesota, this was kind of lucky because Clay Parrott had such a bad game on special teams. Muffed a kick. He also did a fair catch at the 3-yard line, so he gave his team a long field by choice. But this one screamed under. I was surprised Cal played as well as they did. Saga Patelli is actually very good, it seems, at QB. And we just didn't have that for Minnesota with Drake Lindsay. That is every game we bet. Again, it went up 8 units to start the week. But let's do a quick little look-ahead spot because we can. Lines are out. Have some flagged for potential bets this week. I'll go back to this screen. I don't have anything to show you, unfortunately. I'm sorry about that. But quickly, pull up my sheet. We have Southern Miss against Louisiana Tech flagged. So looking at this game, I'll pull up the spreads on the back end for the model. I'm not familiar with where things are for the week yet, or what time these games are. It's sorted by that. So Southern Miss, Louisiana Tech. The spread is 2.5. We bet at 2.5. We make this -6 for Southern Miss. A lot of it stems from Southern Miss just having more talent. Again, a lot of transfers. Braylon Braxton at quarterback. When you look to the preseason, I have this just side by side. We had this line closer to -9. So it's actually giving Louisiana Tech some credit. And probably a lot of that comes from their competitive-ish game against Clemson. But Southern Miss, a team that we show a lot of value on early in the day. There will be full breakdowns for these games too. Just trying to give you like a quick peek if you want to take some bets early. They might potentially be out there. These are all in Discord too. We've already put them in there if you're ever interested in that. We took the over in NC State Duke at 58.5. This contest should be played at a fast pace. Right now, Duke is 7th in seconds per play, and NC State comes in 102nd. The real difference here is both of these secondaries are putrid. NC State lost just about everyone. They had one starter back, and they've been gashed through the air by numerous teams. Just saw Wake Forest and Robbie Ashford have a career day. I honestly didn't know Robbie Ashford had that in him. We saw Caden Hauser in East Carolina do this to NC State. And Mensa is a good quarterback. As long as he can corral the turnovers, reel those in a little bit, they should score at will. And honestly, if he turns the ball over, that's not the worst thing. We've now seen a couple teams rack up big scores on short fields. Meanwhile, Duke secondary is an absolute utter mess without Moore. They need him back badly. Pace is good. Both these teams are extremely pass heavy, especially Duke is #1 in pass rate right now. NC State will try to play balance, and then they've kind of just abandoned it in games, which they should. CJ Bailey has been unbelievable. 58.5. We make this one at 62.5. Rutgers against Iowa. Iowa is walking wounded right now. They've taken a lot of injuries. And some of this is probably precautionary, especially against like UMass last week. There's not that much to really say about that game. But in the preseason, we made this -4.5 in favor of Rutgers. Their defense has been worse than expected, especially when you look at their game against Ohio. And then since then, Rutgers has played Miami, Ohio, and Norfolk State. So we haven't gotten a good look at them since that game as far as opposing offenses go. However, their offense has looked a lot better than expected with Kaliak Manis and solid receivers. They held out a decent amount of them. Ian Strong didn't play last week. KJ Duff has been awesome. He is a difficult opponent, being 6'5" and a 4-star, and the run game's been pretty decent too. We show some advantages Rutgers' direction, and if they get up to an early lead, we know that it is hard for Iowa to crawl back in games. Took a 2.5 there. North Carolina, UCF, under 50.5. This one is kind of there's some sticker shock to it, but both of these teams have new coaching staffs. UCF is currently 74th in pace. North Carolina is 127th. It's a Freddie Kitchens offense. They're trying to run the ball. They've got no efficiency through the air. This will be an easier opponent. Same thing with UCF. I mean, this team has had a lot of trouble scoring. They tried to start Cam Fancher under center. They've had no clear quarterback to begin the year. We make this way under at 40. So there's probably an error at some point for me. You're generally just not 9 points off market. But we took an under 50.5. I'm seeing some 49.5s out there too. Think this one shows some value. Buffalo, Troy, there was a -6.5. Grabbed it. I think if you can get 7, it's fine. Troy lost their quarterback. That's mainly the entire thing. But if you go back to the preseason, Troy was kind of a team with some change. Last year, they started they did a lot of JUCO transfers. We made this 7.5 before the QB stuff. So now think Buffalo, who got a little bit of a scare against Kent State. Kent State's not as bad as we think, but it's they have multiple data points. Buffalo played awesome against Minnesota, and then the Kent State game, I'm going to pull this up quick. It should have been wider. Maybe I'll just share my screen next time so you can see all this stuff. The average margin of victory against Kent State was 8.2. So the 3-point win, yeah, it's bad. The 8.2 average margin of victory, also bad. But they should have won by more. We'll take Buffalo in this game. Mississippi State against Northern Illinois, -21.5. I'm not buying Northern Illinois, even with a semi-decent game against Maryland. They should have lost by 17.5. They end up losing by 11. Mississippi State's a much better team than Maryland. And Mississippi State Maryland mandated they get in their own way against Northern Illinois. If you watch that game, Malik Washington had this ridiculous fumble on the 7-yard line where he literally just set the ball down on the ground. I'm not kidding. It was the most egregious thing I might have seen this year. Maryland missed a 19-yard field goal in that game. I mean, they should have won this contest by a lot more. And the week prior, Northern Illinois beat Holy Cross by 2 points with a 56% post-game win expectancy and a dead even yards per play. Holy Cross. And Holy Cross missed 2 field goals. And NIU had a kick return touchdown. They could have lost that game. Meanwhile, Mississippi State is on a warpath, beat Arizona State. They crushed my Southern Miss team that I love. So I'm bullish on this team. The only hesitation you should have there, or I have there, look ahead spot, you got SEC play coming up. East Carolina, BYU, I don't feel good about this one. We show value on it. I am not confident how the market is going to react. I like what I've seen out of Caden Hauser. I think the NC State data point might be a little fraudulent with how bad that secondary is. But since then, we've seen them absolutely murder 2 teams. It's Campbell and Coastal Carolina. How much stock should we put in those games? I don't know if it's a lot. But coming into the year, we were really down on BYU. They lost Retzlaff in the final hour, and they're turning to a freshman QB. Their marquee win is a slaughtering of Stanford, and in that game, it was 4.9 yards per play to 2.9. They didn't even get to 5 yards per play against Stanford. Yards per attempt was 6.5 through the air. Yards per carry was 3.8 against Stanford. Now, the defense is the strength of that team, but I'm not even sure we should call it a strength. I want to short BYU. They're on the road here. They didn't play last week, so they kind of have their long rest. Should mitigate some of that travel stuff. But I don't know. 7.5 is where I would need it if you're going to take this early, just because I don't have a lot of confidence where this moves. We show value on it, but I can't really promise one way or another which way it'll go. But we'll have the marquee games in a day or two. Until then, thank you for watching. It means a lot. Let me know what you think. Until next time, good luck, everyone. We will see you later.